The biting wind, a harbinger of the cruel winter to come, scoured the last vestiges of green from the skeletal trees clinging to the slopes above Ethelberg. Below, the city, once a bustling hub of trade and fervent piety, now lay choked in the iron embrace of the besieging army. For 3 long months, the banners of Count Volkov, emblazoned with the snarling wolf, had fluttered defiantly on the surrounding hills, a constant, mocking reminder of their slow, agonizing doom. Within the city walls, hunger was no longer a whisper. It was a gnawing beast, its claws tearing at the bellies of men, women, and children alike. Lady Isolde, her face a canvas of sharp angles carved by worry and deprivation, stood by the crenellated battlements of the keep, her gaze fixed on the enemy encampment. Smoke curled lazily from their fires, carrying the phantom scent of roasting meat and warm ale, luxuries that had become mythical within Ethelberg. Her once silken gowns hung loosely on her frame, and the rich embroidery that had once graced her sleeves was frayed and stained. Yet her spine remained unbent, a testament to the iron will inherited from a lineage of warrior queens. Her husband, Lord Theron, the city's stalwart defender, had been wounded weeks ago by a stray arrow, leaving the true burden of leadership, in all but name, to her. She heard the shuffling steps of Brother Silas approach, his breath wheezing in the frigid air. The monk, usually a figure of robust cheer, was now gaunt, his eyes sunken and bloodshot, like dark pools reflecting the city's despair. "My lady," he rasped, his voice thin as dry leaves. "The granaries are all but empty. The last reserves of moldy barley and dried roots will be gone by the morrow, and the wells, they are dwindling fast." Isolde closed her eyes, a sharp pang of anguish piercing her. She had known this, of course. Every day brought a fresh tally of the dying, the emaciated forms carried through the streets, their vacant eyes staring at a sky that offered no salvation. The pleas of the starving echoed through her chambers even in her fitful sleep, a chorus of misery that haunted her waking hours. "And the patrols? Any sign of a breach, brother?" "None. Volkov's men hold fast. Their lines are unbroken, their vigilance unwavering. It seems the devil himself guards their siege lines." Silas wrung his bony hands. "The people, they are losing hope, my lady. There are whispers of surrender, calls for Lord Theron to yield, to spare them further suffering." A flicker of cold fury ignited in Isolde's eyes. "Surrender? To Volkov? He is a butcher, brother. He razed the villages of the foothills, put every soul to the sword. He would offer no quarter, only a slow, agonizing death for our men, and enslavement for our women and children. Ethelberg will not fall by its own hand, not while there is breath in our lungs." Silas bowed his head, his shoulders slumped. "Forgive my weakness, my lady. It is merely the suffering is immense. Children cry themselves to sleep from hunger. Mothers offer their last scraps to their infants, then collapse themselves." He paused, a new tremor in his voice. "And there are rumors of desperate acts, of men turning on each other for a crust of bread." Isolde turned from the ramparts, her gaze falling upon the skeletal figures below in the courtyard, huddled around a meager fire, trying to draw warmth from its dying embers. They were ghosts, shadows of the vibrant community they once were. The knights, once gleaming in their polished armor, were now clad in rust-stained chainmail, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair. Their swords, once symbols of valor, now seemed too heavy for their weakening grips. The very air vibrated with a palpable sense of dread, a chilling silence broken only by the occasional cough or the distant, mocking bray of a Volkov's trumpeter. "We need a miracle, brother," she said, her voice barely a whisper, yet infused with an almost desperate resolve. "Or a plan so audacious, so terrible that it might break their will." Silas shivered, though not from the cold. What kind of plan, my lady? We are surrounded, outnumbered, outmatched. Our last courier hawk was shot down weeks ago. No relief forces coming. Then we must become our own relief, Isolde stated, her eyes now burning with a fierce, almost terrifying light. She thought of Theron, delirious in his sickbed, muttering about glorious battles long past. He had been a lion, but the siege had worn him down, consumed his strength. It was up to her, always up to her. That night, as the moon cast long skeletal shadows across the beleaguered city, Isolde descended into the war council chamber. The air was thick with the scent of stale sweat, fear, and the lingering odor of sickness. A single flickering torch cast dancing shadows on the faces of the remaining commanders. Sir Kalen, the grizzled captain of the city guard, his face a road map of old scars. Master Alara, the city's alchemist and scholar, her spectacles perched on her nose, her eyes sharp despite her emaciated frame, and Father Gregory, the stern, unyielding priest, his cross clutched in a skeletal hand. They greeted her with solemn nods, their weariness evident in every slump of their shoulders, every tired blink. There was no pretense of hope left here, only a grim determination to face whatever came next. The situation is dire, Isolde began, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the heavy silence. Brother Silas has confirmed our worst fears. We have less than a day's rations remaining. The wells are failing. Lord Theron remains gravely ill. A low murmur rippled through the small group. Sir Kalen cleared his throat. My lady, with all due respect, we have done all we can. Our men are too weak to launch a meaningful sortie. Even if we could, Volkov's lines are too strong. We have repelled 3 full assaults on the walls, but each one cost us dearly. We cannot hold much longer. Master Alara adjusted her spectacles. The last batch of medicines is exhausted, my lady. Fever and dysentery are rampant. The death toll rises, each day, particularly among the very young and the very old. The populace is on the brink of revolt, or worse, collective despair that will render them useless for any defense. Father Gregory's voice, usually booming with righteous fervor, was now a hollow echo. God tests us, my lady. He tests our faith. Perhaps it is time to consider terms with Volkov, to save those who can be saved. Isolde slammed her fist on the rough wooden table, the unexpected sound echoing loudly in the stillness. Her eyes flashed, meeting each of theirs with an intensity that brooked no argument. Terms? There are no terms with Volkov, only annihilation. He seeks to break not just our walls, but our very spirit. To make an example of Ethelberg so none dare defy him again. She paused, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her gaze sweeping over their defeated faces. But I have a plan, a desperate measure, one that will either save us or damn us all. The commanders exchanged wary glances. They had heard desperate plans before, each one leading to more casualties, more suffering. What is it, my lady? Sir Kalen asked, his voice laced with a skepticism he dared not voice aloud. Isolde leaned forward, her voice dropping to a low, chilling whisper that compelled their attention. We will show Volkov the true cost of our defiance. We will offer him a gift, a gesture of peace that will shatter his will to fight, even as it shatters our own souls. Master Alara frowned. A gift? We have nothing left to give, my lady. No gold, no jewels of value, no bounties that would tempt a man of Volkov's greed. No, Isolde said, a grim smile playing on her lips, a smile utterly devoid of mirth. Not gold. Something far more precious. Something that will force him to look into the abyss and recoil. She paused, letting the silence stretch, building the tension. Her gaze was fixed on the single torch, its flame dancing wildly, mirroring the turmoil within her. We will offer him our children. A collective gasp ripped through the chamber. Father Gregory's face went ashen. his cross dropping from his trembling fingers to clatter on the floor. Sir Kalen recoiled as if struck, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of his sword. Master Alara stared, her eyes wide with horror, a silent scream frozen on her lips. "My lady! What madness is this?" Father Gregory finally choked out, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "You cannot mean to sacrifice the innocents. It is an abomination before God." Sacrifice. Isolde's voice hardened, her eyes now gleaming with a cold, almost fanatical resolve. "No, Father. Not sacrifice. A demonstration. We will send out the youngest, the most vulnerable, clad in their purest white garments. They will walk to his camp, not as offerings, but as living specters of our suffering, and a testament to the depths to which we have been driven." "But what then?" Sir Kalen stammered, his mind reeling. "He will simply take them, use them as hostages, or worse." "He will be offered them," Isolde corrected, her voice dripping with venomous intent. "He will be told that these are the last remnants of Athelberg's future, that we are willing to strip ourselves of everything to face utter desolation rather than yield to his terms. And then we will give him a choice." She stood, her shadow looming over the table, stretching long and distorted on the wall. "We will give him the choice of taking them, and forever bearing the stain of such an act. Or he can choose to retreat, knowing that he faced a city that chose self-immolation over subjugation." Her voice dropped again, barely audible. "And if he chooses to take them, we will ensure that his victory tastes like ash in his mouth. For the children will carry with them a plague, one that will spread through his army like wildfire, a curse on his very soul." The first light of dawn painted the eastern sky in hues of bruised purple and sickly gray, a fitting backdrop for the horror about to unfold. A thin, icy mist clung to the cobblestones of Ethelberg, muffling the sounds of the city, lending an ethereal, almost spectral quality to the figures gathering in the great courtyard before the keep. No trumpets blared, no drums beat a martial rhythm. Only the distant, mournful caw of a crow broke the oppressive silence. Lady Isolde stood on the steps of the keep, her face ashen, her eyes shadowed by a sleepless night filled with unspeakable calculations. Beside her, Master Alara, her hands, trembling, adjusted a small leather satchel slung over her shoulder. Within it, carefully stoppered vials rattled faintly, the tinctures that would condemn or save. Father Gregory, a ghost in his robes, stood slightly apart, his gaze fixed on the ground, his lips moving in a silent, desperate prayer. His usual sternness was gone, replaced by a profound, agonizing grief. Slowly, reluctantly, the city guard, their faces grim and defeated, began to bring them forth. The children. They were arrayed in their finest, albeit worn and patched, white linen garments, as Isolde had commanded. Their hair, usually wild with play, was combed smooth. Their faces, scrubbed clean of the grime of the siege, they clutched tattered wooden toys, crudely carved dolls, or faded scraps of cloth, the last vestiges of their innocent world. Their eyes, wide and curious, darted around, taking in the assembled crowd of skeletal, silent adults. Some smiled. Uncertainly, some whimpered softly, confused by the strange solemnity. The youngest, infants bundled in thin blankets, nestled in the arms of older siblings, their tiny fists occasionally reaching out for a fleeting, comforting touch. Among them was little Lyra, no more than 5 summers old, her blonde curls a startling brightness in the gloom. She held a chipped clay bird, its painted wings long faded, and her small, trusting hand was clasped tightly in that of her older brother, Finn, a boy of 10 whose face was already too old, too knowing. His eyes, the same piercing blue as Isolde's, held a flicker of fear but also a fragile, bewildered hope. Father Gregory had spoken to them, to all of them, in the hushed, trembling voice of a man battling his own soul. He had spoken of God's grace, of brave messengers, of a journey to bring peace. He had lied, and the lie was a brand on his tongue. Isolde's gaze fell upon Finn, then Lyra. A cold dread, colder than the winter air, seized her. These were not soldiers. These were fragile vessels, their lives barely begun. Each small face was a stark reflection of the monstrous choice she had made. For a fleeting moment, her resolve wavered, a phantom hand reaching out to pull them back, to tear down the walls and face Volkov's wrath head-on, rather than commit this unspeakable act. But then the images returned, the starving masses, the rotting corpses, the slow, agonizing descent into madness that was Ethelberg's present. And the resolve hardened once more, forged in the fires of desperation. Master Ilara stepped forward, her hands shaking so violently she almost dropped a vial. She uncorked it, the faint, acrid scent of the concoction wafting through the cold air. Her movements were precise, almost mechanical, as she began to administer the drops to each child. A few drops, hidden within a spoonful of the last, precious honey, a cruel sweetness masking the bitter truth. The children swallowed without question, some scrunching their faces at the unfamiliar taste, others smiling at the rare treat. They did not know the slow death that had just entered their innocent bodies, a death designed not to strike them down instantly, but to spread like a phantom, insidious disease once they reached the enemy lines. It was a plague, yes, but a delayed one. A silent assassin. Finn, ever watchful, eyed the strange liquid with suspicion. "What is it, Master Ilara?" he asked, his voice thin but steady. Ilara's eyes, filled with a tormented sorrow, met his. "It is courage, little one. A special brew to keep you strong on your journey." Her voice was hoarse, thick with unshed tears. She avoided Isolde's gaze. Lyra giggled, wiping a drop of honey from her chin. "It tastes like sunshine." The innocent words were a dagger in Isolde's heart. She had to steel herself, to become the unyielding rock, for if she broke, Ethelberg would shatter with her. As each child received the courage, a small, plain wooden doll was placed in their hands. They were crude, faceless things, carved from salvaged wood, but they were a symbol, a final, tangible link to their homes. "These are your guardians," Father Gregory announced, his voice raspy, forcing the words out. "They will watch over you. Hold them tight." When all the children had received their potion and their wooden guardians, they numbered just over 20, the last hope and the ultimate curse of Ethelberg. Sir Kalin, his face a mask of grief and grim duty, motioned for his men to open the great main gate, a creaking, groaning sound that echoed ominously through the courtyard. The giant wooden planks, usually barred shut with iron and defiance, now swung inward, revealing the scarred, frozen earth outside. A hush fell over the assembled citizens, a silent, communal agony. Mothers clutched their children, fathers bowed their heads, and the elderly wept openly. It was a scene of unparalleled heartbreak, a wound carved deep into the soul of the city. Isolde stepped forward, her voice resonating with an unnatural strength. "Children of Ethelberg," she called out, her voice cutting through the mist. "You are the bravest among us. You carry the hope of our city, the spirit of our people. Go forth, fear not, and know that your sacrifice, your mission, will echo through eternity." Her words, though carefully chosen, were met with only a deeper silence, the kind that spoke of profound shock and despair. No cheers, no rallying cries, only the silent, desperate tears of a people forced to witness an unthinkable act. Father Gregory, his shoulders shaking, managed to lift his cross. "Go with God, my little lambs," he whispered, his voice broken. "May he forgive us all." Then, with agonizing slowness, the children began to walk. Led by Finn, clutching Lyra's hand, the procession began its silent, barefoot march across the frozen ground towards Volkov's camp. Their tiny figures, clad in white, seemed impossibly small against the vast, desolate landscape. They walked with hesitant steps, some glancing back at the imposing walls of their city, others gazing with innocent wonder at the distant, sprawling encampment of the enemy. The wooden dolls, clutched tightly, were their only companions in this solitary, horrifying pilgrimage. Isolde watched them go, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. Each small step they took was a hammer blow to her soul, a chilling testament to the lengths to which she had been driven. She saw Lyra stumble, Finn steady her. She saw a tiny hand raised to wave, then drop, as the child realized there was no answering wave from the silent, grieving figures on the ramparts. The mist began to dissipate, revealing the stark lines of the enemy siege engines, their black forms like skeletal monsters against the pale sky. The tents of Volkov's army, once distant specks, now loomed larger, a sea of canvas stretching across the plains. As the children neared, a ripple of confusion spread through the enemy lines. Sentries, initially raising their bows, hesitated, their weapons lowering slowly as they struggled to comprehend the surreal sight. No trumpets from Volkov's camp heralded their approach, no battle cries met them. Just a stunned, disbelieving silence. The usual cacophony of the siege, the shouts, the hammering, the distant clang of metal, had abruptly ceased. Even the scavenging crows seemed to fall silent, hovering above the scene like dark, silent witnesses. Volkov himself emerged from his command tent, a hulking figure even at this distance, his wolf banner snapping above him. He stood with his lieutenants, their expressions a mixture of confusion and growing unease. He watched the white-clad procession approach, his burly arms crossed over his chest, his face unreadable. The children, driven by the vague instructions of Father Gregory, and the sheer momentum of their march, continued forward. Finn, his small chin trembling, but his eyes resolute, led them directly towards Volkov's tent, a tiny general leading an army of the condemned. As they reached the outer perimeter of the enemy camp, a lone figure, a young guardsman, stepped forward, his sword still sheathed. He bent down, his face a mixture of shock and pity, and spoke to Finn. What words were exchanged, Isolde could not tell from her distant vantage point, but she saw Finn gesture towards the city, then towards his sister, Lyra. Then, the unimaginable happened. Volkov, as if shaking off a spell, roared a command. His lieutenants, startled, leaped to obey. A detachment of armored soldiers, grim-faced and silent, moved to surround the children. They were not aggressive, not violent, but their presence was unmistakable. The children were taken. Her gambit, her terrible, desperate hope, had been met. Isolde watched, a single, silent tear tracking a path through the grime on her cheek. The sun, fully risen now, cast a pale, weak light over the scene. The children, swallowed by the sea of enemy soldiers, were gone from view. The silence stretched, a vast echoing emptiness. The fate of Ethelberg, and the souls of all who remained within its walls, now rested on a disease yet to blossom, and the conscience of a man known only for his brutality. A cold, triumphant wind swept through the gates Isolde had opened, carrying, with it, the phantom screams of the innocent. She had offered them a gift, a gesture of peace, and Volkov had accepted,